All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm Dr. Sarah Brandt, and I am the associate of the clinic. Before we get started with today's presentation on literacy, I'd like to share a little bit of background. At the clinic, we provide direct services like assessment and therapy, as well as support services like consultation and training for deaf and hearing individuals with complex needs, as well as their families and the professionals who support them. Our services span a variety of fields and disciplines, and we strive to use an interdisciplinary approach and raise the bar for service provision for this population. We encourage you to explore our website, follow us on Facebook, and reach out if we may be of support to your child, family, or a team. Go to the next slide, Maddie. While some of you may be returning viewers to our Lunch and Learn program, some may be joining for the first time. This is a free monthly program that aims to expand and strengthen our network, explore important topics, and showcase the expertise of our clinician team. Lunch and Learns run on the second Wednesday of each month at 12 o'clock Eastern time, same time every month. So we encourage you to spread the word so that our future programs can reach a wider audience. There have been a few scheduling changes for our upcoming Lunch and Learn programs. Next month, we will be hearing from the director of the clinic, Dr. Amy Zarkowski, who will be presenting on interacting with others, the art and science of pragmatics. Be on the lookout for additional information about our upcoming programs. Next slide, Maddie. Today, I have the very great pleasure of welcoming Maddie Gibson. Maddie is a practicing teacher of the deaf, as well as a reading specialist, and provides educational services for the clinic. She specializes in developing and implementing language and literacy plans for students who use American Sign Language, as well as AAC. I would just like to add that Maddie is a masterful teacher, and I am thrilled that we were able to capture her time and expertise here today to share with all of you. Today's presentation focuses on expanding our definition and understanding of literacy. Please do use the Q&A if you have questions, and those will be addressed at the end of the presentation. And you may also use the chat if you have any issues with accessibility or if you wish to interact with the other attendees. I'm going to pass it off to Maddie to help us learn about literacy.
Hello, thanks, Sarah. That was so nice. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it. All these topics I am going to talk about within literacy, I could spend hours talking about, so I'm really going to try to refrain from going on tangents, but we're just going to touch kind of the surface of a bunch of different things. So go ahead and read this. So there are 1,000 definitions of literacy that if you just Google, you can find so many. I really like this one because I think it pulls in a ton of different really great words into what literacy means. Typically, literacy is, oh, it's reading and writing, but it's so much more than that. The presentation today, I really want to focus on meaning, so critiquing meaning through interaction and involvement. So that's going to be, how can we get students to make meaning? as they read text, before text, as they talk about text, as they interact with text. How can they make meaning? Okay, so what is the goal of literacy? Taking away, oh, well, they need to pass this test, they need to meet these standards. Forget about those things. What is the goal? Why do we learn to read? Why do we learn to write? Why do we need to be literate? So when you think of whatever you have in your mind, what is the best of those things? What is the best answer? So I'm going to give you some examples about what should be included in your definition. I'm going to dramatically go through these to hopefully change your mind. So out of all of these things, which one is the best? If I have a novel that I read and I come to work and my coworker says, oh, I just listened to this great book on Audible, my response is not going to be, that's not actually reading a book. You don't think like that. It's like, oh, what was it about? Let's talk about it. You know, so when thinking of what literacy could mean, it can mean a lot of things. So we're going to start kind of, this is what's going to, I want to kickstart your imagination of what literacy could be. And by the way, no one of these is the best. There's not one that's better than another. So we're just going to open up our mind a little bit. So traditionally, there are 5 pillars of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And again, great things. So such important things. That's why they're pillars. Very important. For deaf students, we have a couple different pillars: conversations, alphabetic principle, writing, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. Similar, again, important, but that's so hard. You can't just do fluency, you know, do the same activity every day and bam, fluent. We have students that, you know, they're complex communicators, they're deaf and learning to read in a different approach. We have students who, you know, are struggling to learn how to read. We are not born with this natural ability to just learn how to read as we get older. It is a taught skill. So as teachers, I learned these 5 pillars my freshman year of college. And then by my senior year, I was like, okay, so like, what do we do? This is so there within that we have so many different skills. So where do we go from here? How can we make meaning from these 5 things that should be, oh, it's super easy, just work on these 5 things and you'll have literate kids? That's super not true. Okay, so it's all about making meaning. We're going to go back to that first definition. If someone cannot make meaning from what they are reading, does it matter? And I'm going to give you some examples of this, but this is kind of our primary question for the day. I've said that a lot. I feel like we have a lot of questions, but this is now my new favorite. Doesn't matter. They cannot make meaning from what's going on. Okay, so in relation to that, we have kind of the surface level and deep structure. And this surface level is going to be what's on top. It's what the signer, speaker, or text says. And then deep structure is what's really meant. This is where meaning is going to happen. So I was trying to think of a really quick example of this, and this is what I came up with. So if I say to you, if I walk up and say, which I would never do, but if I said, ooh, I like your shirt, that surface level understanding is, oh, hey, I like your shirt. But deep structure, look at my facial expressions, look at the tone in which I said that. I don't really mean that. So that deep structure, that understanding of what I really meant is going to be very different than just the words that came out of my mouth. So now let's look at that in text. So if you have a student who is at word level reading and they can fluently read this, you could get a student that says, "The red is chicken." And it's like, great, that's a great job reading that. You need a student to stop and say, "That does not make sense. Maddie, this does not make sense. That is not, I don't get it. That can't be right." So that's what we're looking for, is a student who's going to read and say, and really try to analyze what's going on, try to make meaning. Same thing, that's just another example. Maddie eats shirts. Well, wait a second. The story is not about her eating shirts. I know Maddie, she does not do that. So how does this sentence make sense? But if you have a student that's just reading those and kind of taking it as it is and not questioning it, they're not really comprehending or getting that deep structure, which we were just talking about. I really wanted to slam this point home, so I want you to read this. Okay, did everybody read it? Okay, so you can read through all those words. You can say all those words. Now, let's take a test on this information. I want to start, let's have a dialogue about this information. Unless for some reason you have, this, if we have any doctors present, medical doctors who could shine some light, this is such a hard paragraph. And it's hard because me as a teacher, I'm not bringing any background knowledge to this. And, for students, it's kind of the same thing. What are they bringing to the table? And as an adult, if somebody asked you to read this, get in a discussion group, share your thoughts, feelings, problem solve for this, that's so hard and it's unrealistic. It's impossible. It's not fair. This paragraph was, I had hip surgery last year. This was written about me and I still don't have a lot of opinions on it. I can't talk about it that much. I'm not bringing that much background to the table. So when we teach new content, we have to connect new information to known information. Okay. When I give this new information, if there is no known information to connect that bridge, it's just going to fall short. There's nothing for it to hold on to. I could do a whole nother presentation about schema and how that develops, but there's nothing to connect to in your brain. Okay, it just kind of falls short. I could memorize this, I could stand up and I could repeat this, but that true understanding, it's not going to stick. Okay, so we have to have both parts of that bridge. We have to have solidified known information, and that's that background information, so that new information can connect to it. Hence that bridge visual. Again, I know I'm going through this so fast, but it's just very surface level things, but we could talk about this forever and ever. Okay, so to get that bridge fully across, what skills do we need to target then? If it's not just these 5 pillars, what other things do we need to target to make sure our students are making meaning? This was truly just off the top of my head. Okay, this is what we talked about before: phonics, phonemic awareness, alphabetic principle, things like that. Those are the typical skills that we just hear about all the time. What else do they need to be literate? What do they need? Understanding of language use in general, bilingual students, for deaf students, that understanding that this is print English and we are translating it to ASL, which is a different language. AAC users, that understanding of how to navigate the AAC. Executive functioning, translation, how to go from one language to another. Background knowledge, working memory, receptive comprehension, knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, pragmatic understanding, inferencing ability, self-efficacy. That was just off the top of my head of what I could fit into this slide. So we need a lot of things, and these are things that are going to be the foundation of these literacy skills. If you don't have the foundation of all this, you can have students be memorizing words and look like they're the most fluent and be hitting one of those 5 levels of, or one of the 5 pillars we talked about before, but fluency alone does not matter. I don't know if that's a dramatic thing to say. I don't actually care if that is the only thing they can do, because comprehension, making meaning is more important. Okay, being able to critically think about text, critically think about things that are going on in a text, that is going to be the more important thing. So we need all of those pillars to be functioning together, but there's a lot of things students also need to access those pillars. And here's what I came up with. So now what do we do? Literacy practice, again, which I said before, I want to change how you approach it. It's not always we're just going to read books. Reading books is important, but we need to work on all of these skills. And you don't have to do all of these skills while students are reading a book, especially if you have struggling readers. That can be extremely frustrating to be trying to work on new skills. Also doing self-read text, which could be very challenging. They're still learning to decode. They're still learning to recognize words. So having that challenge of trying to decode print, but then also here's a new skill that's way too much. So how can we take these skills and work on them in a way that's different? My favorite thing ever, and I'm pretty sure my class is so sick of it, is I use GIFs for everything. And there we go. So in this GIF, which you can do this a lot of different ways, here's a birthday party. Kids maybe have experienced this or not. But if they cannot discuss what's going on in a GIF, then they're not going to be able to read a paragraph about a birthday party and understand it. So how can we take, okay, here is a 2nd grade level paragraph about a birthday party. It's inaccessible. The vocabulary is too high. This is written too high. What is the foundation of accessing that? And if we go back to, let's look at a birthday party and then see what we can interpret. What kind of information can we find? So how can we build comprehension, background knowledge, all of these things into just looking at a GIF? And I like it better than a movie because it plays itself and I don't just have to keep hitting play 100 times. But here, I listed some questions, but getting a discussion started around this. Now, back to books. Okay, we're, again, so surface level, and I'm going to have to speed through this, but the best thing probably ever that I think I've learned is how to do shared reading. It has changed my life. I'm making a lot of lofty promises about things that will change your life, but again, I love this, so take it with a grain of salt. Okay, so shared reading, the interactions that are going to occur between an adult and a student as they look at a book together. So our goals for this is we want to increase student engagement in their interactions with a text. We want the responses to be student-oriented. Keeping in mind, to do this, we have to include wait time, which is so hard because in your mind, 10 seconds feels like 10 minutes, but that is a huge part of this is wait time. And we're focusing on planned questioning and modeling language. This specific shared reading strategy is taken from this book, this Comprehensive Literacy for All. I put a picture of it, and it's also in my references. It is fantastic. It has things for reading, writing, tons of strategies. So definitely take a look, but this is what this strategy is from. Okay. So this is David, always getting into a mess. Typically, when we open a book and we do a read aloud, we kind of fall back into these WH questions, those who, what, where, when, why questions. And it's who are the characters? What is happening? Where are they? Why are they doing that? And it becomes this kind of barricade of questions, and you as a teacher are looking for a specific answer for your student. And the structure of that dialogue is question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. So it's not really a dialogue. So again, I'm going to change your mind. Try this. Making observations. I see you looking at David. He is messy. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. So you want to expand on student language. If the student says one word, bad, then expand on that. Oh, he is being bad. We cannot throw food. And then you want to wait for student contributions. You're kind of putting out there a comment. And we'll talk about this on the next slide. You're putting a comment and you're waiting for that response. And that's that wait time we talked about. You have to give students time to look at the text or look at the illustrations, process what you said, look again, come up with their own response, and then produce it. So making sure you include that wait time is huge. So we're going to follow, it's called CAR, C-A-R, it's an acronym. Comment and wait, ask for participation and wait, and then respond by adding a little more. So to do this, in that A for asking for participation and the C for comment, we can label objects and things in the illustration, talk about what's going on in the book, refer back to real life connections, and also reference the print. So here's the graphic for this, and it's after you look at it, I keep them because I think it's pretty easy to follow. So you'll start on the left, the read the page and comment. And the read the page, when I do this, depending on the student, I don't read the whole page. I'll kind of start with something that I know will hook them into this. And wait, and you have the student comments, asks questions, or interacts. And then you'll follow that. And that's that respond by repeating and adding a little more. So we've turned this just question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. We've turned it into a conversation. We are having a conversation about the text. And it's not, I'm looking for one thing. There is more value in that student's answer because I am accepting it and I am adding to it. Okay. And in addition to this is dialogic reading. Okay, I'll give you a second to read this. So this is the next step as we move from that CAR strategy to move into dialogic reading. The criteria for this is they have to be doing the CAR strategy before you're going to jump into this, because this is just a little bit higher level, and the scaffold for this is that CAR. Okay, these are more specified prompts within dialogic reading. So there's so many acronyms. We're going to put the crowd in CAR. So crowd, with a different text, it can be completion. He huffed and he puffed and I'm looking for that response, a recall. So as you see, these are getting a little more specific. We're kind of you can say anything you want about this text and kind of tailoring it a little bit more. Well, what happened to the pig? Where did they go? Open-ended. Tell me what you see here. Tell me what's going on. W is the same WH questions, who, what, where, when, why, focusing on pictures and vocabulary in the text. And then distancing, relating to the student's experiences. So with these, you don't have to get, okay, you have to get 2 completions, 2 recalls, 2 open-ended. You can kind of fit them depending on the text you're reading, but you see that these questions kind of have a little more structure than before. And here's the graphic for that. And you'll see in that A part for CAR, that asking for participation, you're going to do that with the crowd questions we just talked about, or the crowd prompts that we just talked about. So we're still doing the CAR, we're just putting the crowd into it. Okay. Over time, research shows students will consider their own comments more. It's going to provide repeated language learning opportunities. There's going to be more value in their contributions, because instead of right or wrong, you're using that to jumpstart a dialogue. And increase student participation, that's the whole jam of this. And increase proficiency with AAC devices. Read things all the time. You can keep repeating them. You don't have to do the same thing every single time you read. Ask different questions, do different activities. I added wordless books too, because again, that's another tangent I could go on about how many things you can do with wordless books at any age. Yeah, you're gonna hold me back because that's like my favorite thing to talk about. But don't be scared of wordless books. It's a great option. Okay, this again, translation you could do a whole degree in just this. Okay, so this is specifically for deaf and hard of hearing students. The task for deaf and hard of hearing students to read is insane. So again, we're going back to making meaning. For deaf and hard of hearing students, if they read "the cat ran up the tree." If I had a student that read that and signed, yeah, just like the interpreters did, "the cat ran up the tree." There's absolutely no comprehension. The best way to translate that is "the cat ran up the tree." That's showing, okay, they're taking that, understanding what that sentence is talking about, and then now they're bringing that back into ASL. Same thing for this, make up your mind. So hard. So hard. Because at the word level, those words are easy words. Those are kindergarten, first grade words. Super easy. But when you can put them in a sentence, the meaning behind that is so different. Okay, we can go from, that individual make up your mind to that sentence. What it means is, oh, decide that for yourself. So for students to be able to do that, they have to be able to activate that schema. They have to have background knowledge for that, especially for ASL, to say, okay, how do I set up what that looks like for a cat running up the tree? Use logic to say, okay, this is the way I sign this doesn't match, especially for multiple meaning words. Ran can run, your nose can run, the faucet can run. There's a lot of different sign options for one English word. So they have to use logic to say, okay, yeah, this one fits and this one does not. And then also have that word and phrase knowledge. So my students, we spend so long working on this. I mean, every single day within a ton of different contexts, because if they don't master this, they're not going to make meaning from text. The last thing, and this is a quick tip that I love and I love sharing for specifically students that use AAC. Typically when you go to introduce a new word, you'll show a picture, they'll do an activity, you'll introduce a new word. And let's say that word is coffee. And then it'll be programmed into their device and they can touch coffee and they learn how to, maybe they can track that. They can go to food and drinks and then coffee. Whatever it is, they can find that word. But I have a new kind of challenge for you. If we want these students to see how they're making meaning, when you first introduce this topic, do not program the word coffee yet. Hold, just wait a second. Don't do that. Let them pull up this, have a cup of coffee, pull up a picture, whatever it is, and see what that's already in their device can they use to describe coffee. Maybe it's, oh, mom drinks that. Maybe it's hot, maybe it's cold. And you can kind of see what their schema looks like. So if they have this huge schema, oh, it's brown, it's hot, you use sugar, you use milk, you have all these things established, they have a strong schema and background knowledge of coffee. So when you add that new word, it's connecting to something. It's going to flow right through. But if they can't describe coffee at all with no background knowledge, that's not a word you should just put in and they just match, because that becomes a matching task. It's not a comprehension task. Okay. So you would need to go back and say, okay, how can I increase their comprehension and background knowledge on coffee or whatever the subject is? Because you don't want just matching tasks with AAC. You want to make sure that they have that background knowledge and schema and they're comprehending everything that's going on. Okay, wow, I feel like I was speed talking for a little bit. So I hope some of that was, you could understand what's going on. You were making meaning from anything that I said. Okay. I think Sarah's gonna hop on.
Thank you so much, Maddie. Always so much to learn from you. I love your tip about new vocabulary in AAC. I think sometimes as educators, our first instinct is to put it in there and make sure it's accessible and right there. But the steps that you describe really help you make sure it's the appropriate thing and developing an understanding of what their schema are before. I think that's fantastic. That's awesome.
Thanks.
We haven't really had too many questions content related come through on the chat. There was a question about the slides, and this is being recorded and it will be posted on our website. I will share the link to that in the chat in a moment here. And the previous Lunch and Learns are also available there. So if there's one you missed or you'd like to learn some more about some other topics, those are available to you. But feel free to go ahead at this point and use the chat or the Q&A to pose some questions to Maddie regarding literacy, shared reading, anything you would like to know a little bit more about. We would love to hear from you. We have a comment, this was so good. It seems to connect really with declarative language. Do you have any thoughts on that? And maybe you could, if you feel comfortable giving a quick, what is declarative language?
Yeah, I think Adrienne should also come on and give it, because she is going to talk about this way better than I will.
If you'd like to, Adrienne, you can pop on. Otherwise, either Maddie can jump in or I can jump in.
Hi, Adrienne. No, I learned so much during this talk, and I love how the CAR acronym that you described. When we were learning about declarative language recently, we're learning about the concept of pointing out what we observe and connecting to our prior knowledge to help our students learn how to do that for themselves. Yeah. So, and that conversation was just in the conversation of language in general. Yeah. So then that is such a natural, and that's exactly kind of what you described, but within reading. So
Yeah,
I thought it was
for
neat.
sure. Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of like when you think of any skill, how far do we take these steps back and where does that skill start? And it starts just in the using declarative language in the environment. And I like shared reading so much because it becomes more of a fun thing. It becomes this back and forth. And I'm always surprised by what they have to say. And I use this strategy with I have students who are typical in my class as well. This is not a strategy only for complex communicators, only for deaf, only for, A, B, C, D. And I like doing read alouds. I like it so much more. And I think they seem to like it more because I think they, like I said before, see value in that contribution. And so much of it kind of shifts the game. It's student centered and it's not teacher centered. But yeah, totally, I agree.
Thanks, Adrian. We have another comment. This is so great. It gives me so many ideas for introducing movement concepts to students. Love that idea. I know that your class is busy and that you do a lot of movement within your lessons, not a lot of desk sitting going on in your classroom. Students are using their bodies and using movement to help facilitate their learning.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, everything. And that could be a whole how to integrate movement into literacy. That could be the next one.
Absolutely. Another comment. I have learned so much from your shared reading, and I think that has helped me in my STEAM instruction. For those who may not be aware, STEAM instruction, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And I think that's similarly connected to the movement that it's not literacy isn't in its own bucket. It isn't in its own silo. It applies across the board with movement and with science and tech, and it's everywhere. And with our emojis on our phones and at the grocery store and everywhere. It's really throughout our entire lives.
Oh, I see this question. Yes, I do. I just realized it. I don't think I put it in my references. I can add it now. It's an article by John Luckner. I will go back and add it for sure. But yeah. Thought I had everything ready to go, and then there's always one thing that I'm like, ah. But yes, yeah, I will.
We'll find it. We can even add it in to the slides, Maddie. No worries.
Yeah.
Reflecting on your, I'm looking back at the slides here, your comments about making meaning and how a student can come across something like the red is chicken and Maddie eats shirts, and how as educators, I think it's common for us to see students who just, the red is chicken and they just plow forward, and there's no that moment of, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. And seeing kids have that moment where they have that moment of, wait, this isn't what it's, and then going back and self-correcting is so powerful. And I know in other situations you've shared some of the things you do to promote that understanding with your, very artful teaching of, it's pouring rain outside. All right, let's go out for recess, and seeing if the kids are like, Patty, we can't, I love those stories that you've shared about that, and how that's something, it's not during a literacy task, it's not necessarily even text, but it's just, stopping to question what's happening in the environment to make sure that we're understanding, language and literacy in the right way.
Yeah, because it sounds so good when they read it. You're like, yes, they read it and it sounds great. And then you're like, they have no idea what's happening. And when I talked about all these other strategies besides the pillars, I would say this is ballpark, dramatic ballpark, but 75% of my day working on literacy skills is not within any kind of text.
We have a question about any specific recommendations for wordless books. Do you have any favorites or resources where folks can go to find lists? I think there are a lot of libraries create a list of wordless books.
And online it breaks them down by age. I can I don't know if these slides will be shared, but I can put that as in my references too. But you can search by age, because there's obviously wordless books for younger kids, but if you're working with a high schooler, they don't want to read these basic, kind of elementary wordless books. And yeah, I can add a link to that, but looking up just wordless books by age, and there's a ton of sites that have more advanced content, which you can keep working on that higher level content, but without the demand of print. And graphic novels are another great addition to that. Comic books can be so rich in content, but it's not a huge demand of so much print.
Before moving on to a different question, we have a recommendation of the book Chalk as a great one, and another one, Pancakes for Breakfast, which is probably my all-time favorite.
Yeah, there's one and I can't remember the name of it. It's an entire story about explaining the process of immigration, and it's a fully wordless book. And I remember reading it and having to take time to go through it. I was like, this could be used as a college text, like how to, like, there's so many points of discussion that could, be generated just from this book with absolutely no text. So yeah, definitely explore those a little bit more. There's a ton out there.
To step back to a question related to parents and caregivers who may be viewing this presentation, do you have any specific suggestions for those who maybe aren't in an academic environment, but what might parents and caregivers and families be able to do at home to promote some of these concepts?
I would say the best thing, and you kind of just mentioned it, is having them think about things, be active participants in the conversation, and try to sabotage them at all times. You just said, like, it's pouring rain, like, let's go to the park, and be like, no, that is not a thing. And why can't we do that? Oh, because it's raining outside. Giving them as much independence as possible, starting those executive function skills really early. Having them teach other people how to do things, this is a lofty suggestion, letting them help in the kitchen. I know that's a mess, and again, not every day, maybe sometimes, things like that. Giving them choices throughout the day, exposing them to environmental print. This could go on and on and on. But I would say the best thing is just letting them be active participants in the conversation, even though a lot of things they say, you're going to be like, what? But you're starting that background knowledge. You're starting to build up topics about these things and letting them join into this conversation.
Knowing that those world experiences are really helping them build that foundation that they will bring to the task of literacy learning is really important.
Yeah.
A comment about, thank you for the reminder to allow students wait time.
Yeah,
have the students let us know their understanding of words and topics before we jump ahead. It sounds so simple, but it can be so hard for educators because we just want to jump in and support and help. But it is a great reminder because it is easier said than done, for sure.
For sure.
I want to be mindful of our time, but I see we have one more comment here that someone had heard about the idea of book bags or topic bags. Mm-hmm. So a small backpack with fake food for the grocery store, and to start showing that concrete to abstract representation to go along with potentially with a text. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. And doing the same thing with a book, even taking a book walk of if you can't get to the grocery store, having all those things like play toys. And I don't know what store it is that has those little kid carts that let them shop with you. Those are also great. But yes, I have heard of those topic bags and book bags. It's a great idea. Do we have any other comment? Oh, somebody made a comment about how pronouns are so hard. And yes, 1000% yes. And that could be a whole nother discussion, but I am validating the fact they are extremely hard.
I missed that one in the chat. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other final comments? Feel free to throw them in the chat. As a reminder, this will be available on our website within about a week or so. And if you have been attending our Lunch and Learns and there is something that you've sort of having a burning question about something that you'd like us to cover, please let us know. We have lots of opportunities in the future to connect with you, and we'd like to know what areas you'd like to learn more about. We'd like to thank our interpreting team, Sue and Shauna, for providing communication access today. And we wish you all a great day. Thank you so much for coming today. Bye-bye.